Hey, this is Todd. Let's talk about the old school thief. Thief is an interesting class. First appeared in the Greyhawk supplement to the White Box. From the very beginning, it was a bit controversial. Unlike the three classic classes, fighter, cleric, and wizard, the thief doesn't have as clear a place. And this might not seem obvious to you now, and you certainly might not agree with it. It's something that I think is still a topic, depending on what forums you read and listen to, from the 70s when the thief appeared all the way up until now. But whereas the fighter, cleric, and wizard have set approaches to obstacles that define them. In other words, a fighter uses strength of force. A wizard uses spells, and the cleric sits between them, essentially somewhat force and somewhat spells in the form of faith. That's very clear. Well, what is the thief? Now you think of it as a job. The thief sneaks, the thief picks pockets, the thief picks locks, checks for traps. Great. But in terms of D&D, don't all the classes do that? You go into a dungeon and you're a fighter. Aren't you trying to sneak? Aren't you potentially picking locks, trying to disarm traps, etc.? Same if you're a cleric. Same if you're a wizard. So you think, well, why do we need a thief class? In D&D, aren't we all thieves? Isn't that what adventuring is? Well, the one thing that the thief, I think, does that is different than the other ones is it doesn't have a singular approach in terms of its combat or its spells or its 50-50 combat and spells. It's more about spreading yourself around a number of skills that each one may be circumstantial, but together gives you a unified approach. For the thief, it's the moving, it's the hiding, the picking of locks, the climbing of walls, all utilities. Other than, I know we have backstab, just highly circumstantial, especially if you play by kind of the strict rules of when you could actually get a backstab. So I'm concentrating on the others, which are all utilitarian skills. And we're going to say, hey, that's like a utility infielder on a baseball team. We're going to say that this is your role. You're filling in these kind of gaps that weren't specifically set by the party. Some people from the time the thief was introduced until now still would argue that we don't need a thief. We don't want a thief. As I was saying before, we're all thieves. Personally, I really like what Lamentations of the Flame Princess did, which was replace the thief with what they call the specialist, which gave you a freedom to choose the set of skills that you wanted to make your own personal class about. So you could choose from the regular thiefly skills. I think they also rolled in stuff that you would maybe associate with the ranger class into that. And I think they maybe even a couple other ones that they kind of push into there, but you could choose from this array and sort of build your class from these options to kind of create that sort of skill monkey. Maybe we would say, like a Renaissance type character, one that isn't even though they call it a specialist in Lamentations, you could specialize on one thing, but I think of more of being adroit at a number of things, none of which, except for backstab or sneak attack, whatever you want to call it, are really combat focused. I saw on Twitter somebody asked about their game, looking for a little bit of advice on BX and playing with a thief character, and I think the player was having some issues being a thief, and maybe the GM was trying to figure out how to give them an easier time as a thief, or at least help them out with a thief. And it inspired me to create this video because I thought, well, I can talk about the thief. I've played the thief. I've run games with thieves, and just give some ideas about it. And along with a little bit of explanation, I will say that this is opinionated in the sense that I'm not trying to tell you this is what the rules say precisely, but more my interpretation of them. And I think if you wanted to do a TLDR, I would say, well, you can make your thieves' job a little bit easier by being a little bit generous, because one of the ways in which BX gets dinged a little bit on their thief is the fact, and I haven't looked at Greyhawk, I don't remember if the percentages and everything are the same or different, but in either case, your chances of actually succeeding at a lot of these thiefly tests, with an exception, are quite low, which leads people to think, well, why am I going to try to do these things if I'm going to fail much more often than I'm going to succeed on average? And when you're low level, you can't really afford to fail too much. You have, 4 hit points, and you're trying to sneak past a goblin sentry, and you fail. Chances are that goblin hits you, you're dead. So the consequences of failure are high. But let's get down into those thief abilities, and we'll talk about it and see what's what. Let me just rattle them off for you. You've got open locks, find and remove traps, pickpockets, move silently, climb sheer surfaces, hide in shadows, and hear noise. In the basic rules, you get basically no verbiage telling you exactly what those things mean. They really expect you just to take that title and run with it. That you're going to understand what hide and shadows mean. There's no, like you might find in 5th edition or in a modern game, explaining what they mean by a shadow. Right? There's nothing to say, well, what constitutes a sheer surface? And they also use steep surface kind of interchangeably. So if you look at your B8, which I've got up on my computer screen here, which you can't see, but I can see, in the table, it lists climb sheer surfaces. In the list, it says climb steep surfaces. I prefer sheer for reasons I'll get into momentarily. But the point is, they don't tell you what that means. They don't give you some kind of list or grade saying, okay, here's the point where you reach sheer, here's what's not sheer. And then what do you do if it's not a sheer surface? They just tell you this is maybe a consequence of failure. In the case of climbing, you're going to fall and to take some damage. Same thing with kind of find and remove traps. They just expect you to run with it. Most of them, except for those 2 that I just mentioned, right? Hide in shadows and climb sheer surfaces, and maybe move silently a little bit. The other ones are fairly mundane, but those 3, which are probably the biggest ones for dungeoneering other than find and remove traps, are probably the ones I'm going to concentrate on. But in any case, they don't tell you what they mean. So you as the player, you as the GM, have to get together and figure out what do these mean. And it's important to know what they mean, because you're going to be playing as a thief, or you're going to be GMing for a thief. You're going to want them to know when they're going to be engaging these things, what they mean, when they have to engage them. And of course, engaging them is important because at first level, climbing surfaces you're going to be good at. 87% sheer surfaces. That's great. That's a very high percentage of success. Moving silently is only 20%. Hide in shadows is only 10%. So when I'm playing a thief, I want to know, if I do this thing, am I going to be rolling against that hide in shadows? Because if I am, I've got a 90% chance of failure. I probably don't want to do that. And when I played the thief, I did a lot of that. I would try to figure out, what do I need to do? How can I position myself fictionally to forego that role? I think at one point I remember something was chasing me through the woods. And I thought, what if I climb this tree? Will I still be considered hiding in shadows, or will I still be considered this element? Because I wanted to get away from the fact I know that my climb sheer surfaces is 87%. So I should certainly be able to climb a tree without a roll. But I think I did end up having to roll a roll. But my argument would have been, well, if I can climb a sheer surface, I should be able to climb a regular tree. And then I was thinking, well, if I hide up there, I'm out of the eye line. So I can get away and hide without having to engage this hide skill that at first level I am terrible at. And these are the kinds of things that thief players may be thinking. And one of the dings that people will put on this BX thief is that with such low percentages, you're really dissuading them from trying. Because what happens if you fail? I have 4 hit points. If I fail and this orc with a sling sees me, I'm potentially dead meat. Certainly I'm up in the tree. If he sees me, hits me, and then I'm supposed to roll and maybe I fall off the tree, I'm probably, even if I only take 1 hit point damage from the sling, if I fall off the tree, I'm dead. So it's a big deal. But there is some wiggle room there. I said before, climb sheer surfaces is what they call it. So as a DM, as a player, how do you deal with a tree? It is not a sheer surface. In fact, for most people, climbing regular trees is fairly doable. So what do you do with a thief? My argument is you just give it to them. Would you make the fighter roll? Yes. Would you make the cleric roll? Yes. Would you make the wizard roll? Yes. The thief, just a tree. Child's play to someone who can climb sheer surfaces with an 87% success rate. This is a way you can free up the thief to be a little bit more daring. You're probably not even going to run into too many sheer surfaces. Usually we're in caves, dungeon walls, these things that generally have lots of cracks and crevices or masonry, places you can grip. But you could have fun with having things that are legitimately sheer, because as a party, that's a challenge. Yeah, the thief can get up there just fine, but what about the rest of you? They have to plan. Maybe the thief, I can get up there. Maybe I could tie the rope around this, that. The other thing, maybe you give me your pick or your hammer and some nails or some spikes, and we could figure something out. That's great. But at least you have this one thing that's their avenue to succeed. Same thing with hide and shadows. They don't tell you what does it mean, but if I can hide it in a shadow with 10%, what happens if I hide behind the column? For the fighter, yeah, make them roll. The cleric, make them roll. Wizard, make them roll. Thief, I'm going to give it to you because that's your thing. And if you can hide in a shadow, meaning you could step out of that column and just be in that little sliver of darkness where the torchlight can't penetrate, you can do that with 10% chance. You have essentially full cover or near enough. I'm just going to give it to you. Not going to make you roll. And again, it's only one part of the party, right? So yeah, the thief is hiding behind that column. You got 4 or 5 other party members back there. They're still subject to whatever. Going to give it to you. And of course, if it is a extraordinary circumstance, maybe you make the roll, maybe you give the modifier. But as a general rule, you can hide in shadows. If that's your thing. Then yeah, you could hide behind a column, or you can hide behind a fence, or you could hide behind that boulder over there because you're a thief. And that's your thing. So I think that, and maybe that should really be the crux of the thing, the real TLDR is, right? If you're a thief and you want to and let the thieves run, then allow them the kind of thiefly things to do and save the rolls for those extraordinary circumstances that really require them, and let them get away with the ordinary stuff. And what I usually call ordinary in terms of D&D, you're dealing with things like 1 hit die or below 1 hit die. You're dealing with the peasants. You're dealing with those kind of low-level adversaries. The thief is just a step above them. The thief is just, look, you can hide from that guy. You can pickpocket from the peasant. I don't care too much. But now you're looking at, when you get above that, this shopkeeper is a second-level fighter. Now you got to roll. That guy has got a little bit more to them. Or the guardsman who has 2 hit dice, or the bugbear, something like that. Now you're moving into, okay, now we got to do this. But the ordinary folk, you're just above them. Like in the movies, when you see in one of those Ocean's 11, the movies, right? Matt Damon, the pickpocket, he's nabbing stuff from ordinary folk left and right. They don't have a clue. George Clooney, he's got a couple of levels of rogue or thief in him. So when that happens, that's a different circumstance. And that circumstance is the special one, which warrants rolling. What he's doing to those other everyday level 0 peasants on the train or wherever, we don't care about those. And they don't have anything of importance anyway. I pickpocket that peasant. What did I get? I don't know. You got some lint, maybe a silver piece. No, not even a silver. Silver piece would be payday. You got a copper piece. And I don't know, a rabbit's foot. Who knows what's in there? Not enough. Not enough to make a difference. If it's really going to make a difference, then yeah, maybe you throw the roll in. But of course, I would wonder, what would make a difference that a peasant would be carrying? And if that's the case, something's probably amiss with that situation. But that's a argument for another day. So we have these thieves, and we have talked about what their abilities are, and we've talked about how we could maybe allow them to engage with those abilities, just to give them, not necessarily make them feel like they can do anything, but give them latitude to take chances. And the third thing, of course, is and really the last thing is really just to communicate all this to them and make sure that they know that they have this latitude and that it is okay for them to do this. Because like I said, it's very easy to look at that table, look at those percentages, and other than climbing stuff, you just go, oh gosh, I got to open a lock and who knows what's going to happen. I only have a 15% chance of doing it. Why am I ever going to touch that lock? I don't want to touch that lock. Gosh, I don't know when. The basic rule book only goes to third level. Third level is still just 25%. But if you say, hey, if this is just a normal lock, like what someone might do in their chest, in their little hut, then you're just going to open it. It's going to be for those more special things I'm going to make you roll. And so the thief's going to be a lot more keen to try their hand at those locks, and it makes them feel good. You get a couple of easy wins. And again, obviously, same things for those other ones I mentioned. You can do the same thing with traps. One thing that I like to do, and I've kind of reimagined the thief class a little bit to take advantage of this, but of course, entirely up to you how you like to do it. But I like to sort of grade difficulty based on the level of the dungeon that you're in. And I've talked about this in different videos in terms of different things, but level 1 of the dungeon is kind of level 1 folk, sort of set for level 1 adventurers, level 2 for second level 3 for third level. You can also grade the difficulty of some of the stuff on that same way. Not necessarily so much as far as the move silently in that aspect, but definitely traps and locks. The trap on level 1 of the dungeon is going to be crude, simple, primitive. A lock on a door on level 1 of the dungeon, again, simple, crude, primitive. Level 5, much more advanced, sophisticated, potentially magical or with magical elements, or even if it's not, just very well designed, very well engineered. That's the standard. When your level 5 thief is on level 1, it's no problem for him. The stuff that is his average difficulty is down at level 5. Same thing, if you're on level 1 of a dungeon and you're a level 1 thief, it's about your level. When you're in that some peasant's cabin in the woods, that's level 0. That's you're above that. As you level up, things can become easier for you until they sort of drop off that difficulty list. Maybe you say, okay, if you're level 1 and it's level 0, that's freebies. So when you're level 2, the stuff on level 1 becomes freebies, and so on and so forth. And again, it's just about them getting better. It's also about looking at dungeons as places that get harder. And like with most things in the dungeon, it's things that as a player, you can understand. We've gone down to the 5th level. I understand the difficulty of like that. And I've talked about that in terms of encounters and other things that the party is really meant to understand, that the farther down you go, the more difficult those things get. Well, the same thing can be said for these obstacles for the thieves. The further down you go, the more difficult they get. And you can engage with that. Allow your thieves to shine with stuff that they've conquered. Once you're level 2, the level 1 stuff becomes easy, so on and so forth. I really tend to like thieves. I've always enjoyed playing thieves, or what I used to like to do is playing kind of those magic user thief multi-classes in 1st edition, and I think I played one in 2nd edition as well. I can see both sides of the argument as to whether the thief is a true class or not. It is definitely an amalgamation of different skills. And they are skills that basically, as just an adventurer in general, a generic adventurer that you are kind of engaging with anyway. So why should it be its own class? But I also see it as it's a different, almost really a different meta archetype. You have essentially the specialists in the sense of a fighter is a combat specialist, a wizard is a magic specialist, and then you have the tweener, cleric, half magic, half spell, or half combat. And then you have this thief, which is maybe not in a fictional way, but in a meta way, is a different approach. Someone who doesn't necessarily excel at one specific thing, unless you were to lump all thief stuff together as just thief, but excels at a number of different things. If you like the idea of more being, or you like the idea of having some more customization, definitely take a look at the Lamentations version, the Specialist. I know that for various reasons I won't get into, that Lamentations isn't something that that people are really trying to focus on right now or push because of its creators and issues they have. I don't know if somebody else has made a Specialist-like class. It's probably out there. If you have seen it in the wild or something similar that fits the bill, please let me know in the comments. I'm happy to share it. I just don't know of another one. I haven't looked at some of the newer OSR stuff to see how they have handled the thief or a thief-like class or a specialist-like class. So I don't know. Also, share those with me. I did order Mork Borg the other day, so I'll be interested to read it in general and definitely I'm curious to see if they do anything interesting with the thief. But that is the old school thief. Let me know if you found this interesting as a player or a GM, if you think that it's enlightened you a little bit or given you a little extra knowledge to use in your games. If you like the video, obviously, please give me the thumbs up, hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. I really do appreciate it. Inching towards 1,000 subscribers as I record this, so that every subscriber is a help, and I appreciate every single one of you. That's all I have for that. Let me know also if this is something you'd like me to do more of, delving into particular classes just to discuss some different things about them. The Thief is one that, again, that was kind of close to my heart in some ways, so it was easy to engage about it, but I can be happy to delve into other ones if there's interest. So let me know. Otherwise, game on, and I will talk to you later.